Victoria was a physicist who lived in Manhattan. She was a distinguished member of the Institute of Science and Art. I met her at the opening session of a 5-day workshop at the Omega Institute, a healing and practice center in Rhinebeck, New York. She told me that for the past 16 years, she had suffered from back pain caused by cancer. She had undergone several surgeries, and even chemotherapy and radiation treatments had failed to cure her. She showed me her medical records, filled with notes about her condition. The pain never ceased, like a continuous throbbing toothache. Every night, she had to inject high doses of morphine to relieve the torment of the pain. But during the day, she had to endure the physical agony to stay mentally alert for her work. She wasn't very old, perhaps in her mid-50s, but her hair had turned gray from the illness. She didn't like her gray hair, so she dyed it. Victoria confirmed she had stopped taking medication a few days before the workshop so she could concentrate on listening to my lectures. But now she asked me, how can I endure 5 days without medication? I might have to go home in an ambulance. I said, you'll just have to try your best. But it's okay. I'll understand if you decide to leave. She attended the entire workshop and, at the end, handed me her report. I knew it was important and encouraged her to share it with the group. That week, she had several journeys back into a past life, one filled with suffering. This life appeared to take place during the time of Jesus, near the city of Jerusalem. At that time, she was a poor farmer, a strong man who loved birds and animals. He lived with his wife and daughter in a small wooden house by the road, bothering no one. Victoria realized that the daughter in that life was the same as her current daughter. One day, the farmer came across an injured dove with a broken wing. He knelt to care for it. He blocked the path of a Roman soldier dressed in the uniform of the elite guards of the palace. The soldier brutally beat him on the back, breaking several vertebrae. Other soldiers burned down his house and killed his wife and child. The pain and hatred for the Roman soldiers burned in his heart. From that moment on, he trusted no one. His back never healed. In desperation and pain, both physical and emotional, he dragged himself to the main temple in Jerusalem. There, he lived under a shelter, surviving on the vegetables he grew. He could no longer work, only staying with a monkey, his only companion, and moved with crutches. People thought he was an old man, but in reality, he was just disabled and slightly aged. When he heard of a famous Jewish rabbi known for healing, he embarked on a long journey to hear this rabbi's sermon, the Sermon on the Mount. There was nothing about healing or pain relief, but it was different. The rabbi's followers were startled by the farmer's appearance and drove him away. He hid behind some bushes, and from there, his eyes met those of Yeshi. It was a deep, compassionate gaze, Victoria told me. Yeshua said to the farmer, "Don't go too far." He knew nothing but to obey. The encounter brought him only hope, not healing. He returned to his shelter, inspired by the rabbi's sermon. In it, he found a clear truth. When the rabbi returned to Jerusalem, the farmer grew anxious. He knew Yeshua was in danger. Rumors were spreading about the Romans' plans to harm him. The farmer tried his best to meet and warn him, but it was too late. The next day, people told the story of Yeshua being crucified. The farmer knew he was completely dehydrated. With astonishing courage, he approached Yeshua and brought a wet cloth to squeeze water into his mouth. But Yeshua had died. The farmer felt the world collapse, but then Yeshua looked at him again, one more time, with an infinite gaze of compassion, though his body was writhing, thirsty, and frail. Although Yeshua spoke no words, the farmer began to perceive, through telepathy, the words engraved in his mind. "It's okay. This means existence." Yeshua was gone. The farmer followed him to Calvary, to the execution. Victoria recalled that moments after Yeshua died, the farmer sobbed under the pouring rain. Since losing his family, Yeshua was the only person he trusted. But now the rabbi was gone too. Suddenly, he felt a current run through his head, moving quickly and sharply down his spine. He realized he was standing upright, no longer in pain or disabled. He had been healed. Victoria shouted in the present, "Look, look!" She began to dance, swaying her hips. The pain had completely disappeared. There were no witnesses when the farmer stood up straight. The story happened 2,000 years ago. But here, at this workshop, everyone saw Victoria dancing. Some screamed along. My eyes welled up with tears. Sometimes when I write these things down to report a case, I forget the sense of wonder, the feeling of mystery, reverence, and awe that this journey brought me. There was nothing of hypnosis in this. She suffered severe spinal pain and cartilage damage. Her condition and test results were fully recorded in the medical records she had shown me. I wondered, how would a physicist, a woman of science, integrate into her life what had just happened? That was a question for the intellect, and perhaps the answer would come in time. A moment later, as I watched her, I could feel her joy. On a lazy afternoon in Sydney, I turned on the TV and saw the Oprah Winfrey Show engaged in a heated debate about past and future lives. It was a very lively discussion. This was an American talk show. The guest was Dr. Hazel Denning, a psychoanalyst, an elderly and intelligent woman who spoke very eloquently. She was the founder of the Association for Past Life and Therapies. As a pioneer in this field, she had traveled around the world lecturing on reincarnation. In addition to her clear and articulate speech on reincarnation and the influence of past lives on the present, she was also an excellent psychotherapist. I thought her research on reincarnation in the context of Western psychotherapy would be valuable material for me, so I sought a meeting with her. The plane landed at a small airport in Southern California. Professor Denning personally came to pick me up. Small in stature, she stood straight and moved quickly despite being over 80 years old. She calmly drove back to her home in Riverside, California, a region famous for its oranges. In her study, the walls were covered with diplomas and certificates, 2 PhDs, 2 master's degrees, a bachelor's degree, and many documents attesting to her deep expertise in hypnosis and parapsychology. During the 2 days I stayed at her home, she told me about her work and explained why she chose this profession. Since childhood, Professor Denning had always been curious to know why things happened, why humans had to suffer. She did not believe that suffering was God's will. She felt that such a belief didn't make sense. In her early 20s, by chance, she came across a book about reincarnation. She was overjoyed. Oh my, I've found the answer to all my questions. I was so happy and thought, finally, I've found a logical explanation that can account for all the injustices in the world. At first, she didn't quite believe it. She looked for ancient texts to see what scholars of the past thought about reincarnation, and discovered that all major religions in the world once believed in reincarnation, including Christianity, up until 533 AD, when a Roman emperor and empress banned all mention of it. 2 popes were killed for wanting to keep the passages about reincarnation in the scriptures. Few people know about this. Few also know that early church fathers like Origen and St. Augustine believed in reincarnation. She said, "So those who claim that believing in reincarnation contradicts Christian dogma simply don't know these things." She was even more fascinated to discover that many famous figures from ancient to modern times believed in reincarnation. Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, Henry Ford, Gladstone, Thomas Edison, General Patton, and many more. She applied her understanding of reincarnation to psychotherapy to uncover the deeper causes behind patients who seemed to live in another world or had irrational fears, phobias. I was eager to know how Professor Denning reconciled the seemingly contradictory roles of a psychiatrist and someone who used hypnosis to guide patients back to their past lives. How could she accept the explanation that therapists today use the concept of karma to say that everything happening in this life stems from actions done in past lives? Professor Denning didn't believe that the living environment was the main factor affecting a person's behavior. She acknowledged that surrounding circumstances played an important role, but not the decisive one. According to her, the purpose of life on Earth is to cultivate the soul and aim for higher awareness. A person reincarnates to return to the earthly realm to settle and complete what they left unfinished in past lives. She said some children are born cheerful. Others are easily angered, which means they carry seeds from past lives. According to her, one's destiny cannot be changed. The blessings of parents or surrounding environment can make life more comfortable or more difficult. For this reason, Professor Denning decided to become a professional hypnotist. She wanted to use hypnosis to guide patients back to relive their past lives. She was extremely careful, meticulous, and honest in this work. She didn't try to control the thoughts of her patients. She said that in the past, in the field of hypnosis, people often used post-hypnotic suggestions with phrases like, "Don't eat this food is disgusting," etc. I don't use that method. It's against my principles. I found my own way without manipulating the patient's minds. That's why I prefer using the term altered state instead of hypnosis. In 1980, she founded the Association for Past Life Research and Therapies and was pleased to see the association grow faster than expected as more and more people believed in and wanted to learn about reincarnation. She affirmed that guiding patients to recall past lives, past life therapy, had become an effective tool in psychology and holistic medicine, treating both body and mind. This approach was not only developing rapidly in the US, but also growing in many countries around the world. She was invited to speak several times in Asia and at Utrecht University in the Netherlands, the oldest university there, and the first to teach parapsychology. In the US, those who came to Dr. Denning came from all walks of life. She used conventional methods first. If those didn't work, she would take the patient back to a past life to find the root cause. Her patients included all kinds of people: pastors, professionals, many religious figures, military personnel, and others. Most of them often asked, "What is the purpose of life? Why am I here? Why have I returned this time?" Her patients were usually between the ages of 30 and 40, but there was a 9-year-old girl who asked her parents to take her to see Dr. Denning to understand why she was so afraid of blood. Although only 9 years old, she was very mature. As soon as she drifted off, the girl saw her past life as an old man dying from heart disease. Suddenly she cried out, "No, I didn't die of illness. I died of heartbreak." Then she began describing how the old man, her past self, had taken his wife out to a restaurant. A robber entered the restaurant and shot several people, including his wife. She saw the wife lying in a pool of blood. That horrifying image carried through the consciousness into this life. Along with it came the guilt of not having saved his wife, which tormented her, the doctor concluded. Professor Hazel Denning's views on this subject were very clear because she had witnessed thousands of patients whose lives had changed. She had clearly seen the many tragedies across their lifetimes and had developed her own theories. The following conversation between Ms. Mackenzie and Professor Denning, therefore, was not only informative, but also fascinating and engaging. Vicky Mackenzie, why does reincarnation occur? When I take someone back to a past life and ask why they chose to reincarnate into this family and what their purpose is in returning to the world, everyone gives a similar answer. I really didn't want to return to the world. Forcing myself into a physical body feels like entering a prison. It's suffocating. When I ask, then why did you come back? No one made you stay. The answer is always, because the world is a school to train one's character. To cultivate spirituality and aim upward, one must return to the world. I truly want to grow spiritually, so I had to come back. That's the answer I recorded. In your experience, how many times do people return to this world? Countless times, until they have learned and accomplished what they set out to do. Even in this current life, some people take years to understand the meaning behind the obstacles they face. A woman once came to my office and said, "I'm here to ask about romantic love. How should I respond to that?" As a psychologist, I couldn't just say, "Go ahead and love, and you'll be loved." She continued visiting, though not regularly. It wasn't until 18 years later that she found the truth. During the time we didn't meet, she had a husband, divorced, lived with another man, remarried, divorced again, and went through 5 or 6 other relationships. Finally, one day, she could no longer endure being alone and determined to see me every day until she discovered why she couldn't remain faithful to one person. Eventually, she saw that in a past life, she was the daughter of a wealthy family in Greece. Around the age of 14, she fell in love with a servant boy of the same age. When her father found out, he flew into a rage, exiled the boy to an island, and sold her to an older man. Heartbroken and bitter, she committed suicide. Before dying, she vowed, "I swear I will never, ever love anyone again." Through many years of experience in this work, I've seen that a person's last thoughts or intentions before death, if negative, will carry over into the next life. For example, if someone dies filled with anger and hatred, They will need to practice kindness and purification in the next life to cleanse their heart and let go of that hatred. Returning to that woman, after realizing her past life, she met a kind husband and had 2 children. She is now immersed in a happiness she never imagined she could experience. After witnessing this story, I realized that many people cannot find their answers overnight. They must go through many events before recognizing their karma. This story also led me to the conclusion that one cannot deceive oneself. Only when you see the cause from a past life can you resolve the effect in this one. Sometimes you must go deep into several past lives to see the main cause influencing your current life. Some skeptics say that patients imagine these images, that they fabricate stories from their subconscious to justify their sorrow and pain. If that were truly the case, then psychology should be able to help them resolve all their repressed issues. But in reality, that's not how it works. Many of my patients had been in traditional psychotherapy for years with no results. Do you believe we choose our lives? Yes. Let me tell you a hair-raising story. A woman came to me and said, "My mother is dying, and my father is already dead. Both my parents abused and molested me from the age of 3 to 13. When she drifted off, she relived the experience of being raped as a child and cried out, 'Daddy, don't hurt me.' Then she added, 'I want to forgive my mother before she dies, but it's so hard. I hate both my parents.' If someone is ready to forgive and wants to let go of hatred, that person has undergone a spiritual transformation and can be healed. But if someone says, 'Don't talk to me about forgiving those monsters. I'll never forgive them. I hate them,' then don't try to help them forgive because their heart is not ready. In this woman's case, even though she said she was ready to forgive her parents, I wondered, how can I help her forgive a father and mother who did such horrific things to their own child? I struggled with this question until the patient herself helped me find the answer. She saw that in a past life, during the Nazi era, she was a street child living in alleys, and she had killed another child. Later, she was captured and taken to Auschwitz, a concentration camp for Jews, and was forced to check if Jewish children were truly dead. At first, the work didn't bother her much, but day after day, seeing the countless corpses of children became unbearable. She eventually escaped and was shot to death. The patient added, "In my next life, I wanted my parents to abuse me so I could repay my karma quickly. So I must thank them both for helping me pay my karmic debt." Have you ever been able to prove that these past life stories actually happened? Yes, I always keep an eye out when there's a good opportunity. For example, one client adamantly refused to let her children attend a circus performance. She knew such a prohibition was irrational, but she couldn't do otherwise. When taken back to a past life, she saw that she had been the fat lady in a circus and absolutely loathed the role. She remembered the fat lady's name and even the name of the city. Another patient who was present that day recognized the city and volunteered to investigate. Sure enough, in the early 20th century, there had been a fat lady with that name working in a circus troupe in that very city, just as the woman had described. In her present life, she was also overweight. Another patient recalled that in a previous life, she was a wealthy businessman who drowned aboard the Titanic. She remembered the man's full name. Later, after checking the records, it turned out that this man was indeed listed as a passenger on the Titanic. She said that when she saw the name in the register, she shivered with chills. Beyond such concrete evidence, there are clues showing that the past life stories my clients recount are real, and they make a lot of emotional sense in the context of each individual. Because of this, people can change their lives, can free themselves from distress and irrational fears that disrupt their present existence. Do people ever feel guilty when they see the bad things they did in past lives? Not exactly, once they understand the purpose of reincarnation and karmic ties. I explain to them that what happened in the past isn't what matters most. What matters is what they learn from those experiences. And that seems to be the core principle. There was one very strange case. A patient walked into my office, flopped into the chair, slammed both fists on the arms of the chair, and shouted, "I hate God!" Jesus Christ is a fraud. I've tried everything. I've seen specialists, I've studied all the scriptures, and nothing has changed my life. I'm suffering so much. Everything she touched seemed to fail, even though she was a very capable person. Her career, which looked promising, ultimately failed. Her love life was also a disaster. Though she was still young, she looked like an old woman. Doctors said her body had aged 20 years ahead of her time. When guided back to a past life, she saw herself as a cardinal during the Inquisition, the tribunal led by the Roman Catholic Church to punish heretics. This tormented the cardinal, her past self, greatly. He knew punishing non-believers was wrong, but that was what the church demanded. When asked why she became a key instrument in the Inquisition, she blurted out, "It was to reform the church, because the church at that time had become too corrupt, and I was given this heavy responsibility." From such stories, I've realized that even horrific actions have their own purpose. From this perspective, karma seems very complicated and mysterious, doesn't it? Because if you think of wrongdoers as merely instruments helping others repay their karma, then aren't they innocent? It's very hard to say. Everything is interconnected, causes and conditions interwoven. It's difficult to explain karma in an absolute way. Everything that exists in the world is interdependent, each thing relying on the others to evolve endlessly. Simply put, one could use the example of a masochist, someone who finds happiness in suffering, who might fulfill the desires of a sadist, someone who finds pleasure in another's suffering. These two types of people depend on each other to exist. Nothing is entirely evil. Every experience is a lesson. We may be the perpetrator in one life and the victim in another, and so it goes, life after life, until we learn the lesson. I believe that we choose our own path. Whether it's smooth or difficult is up to us. Once we recognize that truth and accept the purpose of our current life, our external circumstances may begin to change. If a person can take responsibility, they can solve many problems. But those who remain ignorant, refusing to take responsibility and always blaming others, are not yet ready to change. We, as professionals, must be able to see and understand that clearly. When one reaches the state of ultimate awakening, the soul suddenly understands everything. It knows who it is, why it exists here. It sees what it did in previous lives, and what it will do in the future, and so on and so on. But the individual must learn these things on their own. I also don't know why we have to learn so much, but I am not the one who created these rules. I only try to analyze and interpret them. Some people truly do not want to change their unfortunate circumstances, like the story of a woman born almost blind. She had to wear very thick glasses. After a soul reading, she realized that she had chosen to have her eyes that way so she could see less of the material illusions, forget her ego, and turn inward. From then on, she was content with her near blindness and refused to try to improve her vision. Have you seen anyone return to be near people they knew in past lives? Yes, but their roles change. Some people reincarnate together to resolve unfinished business. Some return to help their loved ones. I believe that martyrs, or those who choose to die for a just cause, willingly do so to awaken the conscience of humanity. So saying that karma is merely a form of punishment is not accurate. There is both good and bad karma. That is the law of cause and effect. I knew a lady doctor, a very sweet woman who married the most disagreeable man on earth. He was always whining, irritable, and cruel, though not intentionally so. Gradually, she became disheartened and no longer loved her husband. But she never considered divorce. One day, she came for a soul reading and saw that she had met this man in a past life when he was a lost soul. She had promised to marry him in the next life and help him recover his soul. After that, she changed her attitude, truly loved him, and was gentle and patient with him. Within a year, he changed as well. He went to church with her, drove around town in a red sports car, spoke cheerfully and humorously, and everyone liked him. I use this story to advise families dealing with alcoholic husbands. Although the wife may forgive the husband's drinking, her feelings toward him are often damaged. I tell them, if you truly love him and want to help him change, you shouldn't speak harshly. Show love and speak gently, and he will change. Many women followed this advice and succeeded. Vicki McKenzie. Do souls have a fixed period of time after death before they reincarnate? Hazel Denning. Some reincarnate within hours after death, especially soldiers who die on the battlefield. They can't stand their souls wandering. They want to enter a body immediately. This might explain why there's often a baby boom after wars. Others may wait hundreds of years before reincarnating. Some souls from the Atlantean age are only now returning to the earthly realm. Perhaps they were waiting for the right time to bring new knowledge to help in the transition to the new age. Have you ever met anyone who lived on another planet or in another realm? Occasionally, yes. Many people believe the lower world is the lowest planet on the reincarnation totem pole. Some said they once lived on another planet. One man wrote in a strange script and then translated it into English. He said that planet had a completely different culture. He also said that at the time, he understood the principle of simultaneity, that the past, present, and future are all happening in this very moment. It's very hard to grasp. Do you know your own past lives? Yes, I do. The life just before this one was very cold. I was a woman born in England, married to a wealthy diplomat, living in a grand house with many servants and constant parties. But I was very lonely, living without love. Near death, I remembered the servants tiptoeing around, afraid to make noise. I held my younger sister's hand and said, if I could live again, I would love more. And in this life, one of my younger sisters died at age 9 when I was 11. I mourned her for 2 years. I needed to go through that kind of pain to regain my normal emotional sensitivity. But the most unforgettable memory happened while I was in the bathroom. I had suffered from liver pain since the 8th grade. I was often tormented by gallbladder attacks, headaches so intense they made me nauseous. It was miserable. I also used to have a bad temper. One day, my rage was so intense that 2 small blood vessels in my neck burst. At times, I felt like my anger could make the top of my head fly off. But no one knew because I didn't show it outwardly. About 10 years ago, one day I was showering when a terrible headache hit. I gritted my teeth and said loudly, God, I want to know why I'm tormented by this liver disease, why I have to suffer like this. Just as I finished speaking, I suddenly saw myself as a crusader in the Middle Ages, pierced through the liver by a spear. I was angry to be dying for a noble cause I no longer believed in. I was sickened by what we were doing, burning down beautiful temples. But there was nothing I could do. I knew I was about to die and that I would never again see my wife and 2 sons. I died in rage, and the liver pain I now experienced was the manifestation of that ancient anger. In that moment in the bathroom, I heard a whisper. The root of your anger begins here. From that day on, I was no longer plagued by gallbladder pain. Does knowing your past lives have any benefit in this life? The knowledge of past and future lives has helped me live with serenity and ease. To me, the other world is as real as this one. So when my mother passed away, and later my husband and son died, one after another, I wasn't overwhelmed by grief. On the day my son died in a motorcycle accident, I still went to give a lecture at a university that had been scheduled in advance. When it became known, a professor at the school asked me how I could remain so unmoved by the death of my son. I replied that, to others, the accident was a tragedy, but to me, it was different. I knew my son had been a monk in 3 previous lives. This time, he returned because he wanted to taste worldly life. He lived fast, lived recklessly, and took risks. I knew my son didn't want to continue such a life, and he had chosen to leave this world early before something worse could happen. Although I mourned him, and like any mother, I wished to see him grow up and become a good man. Deep down, I was glad for his release, because I knew my son had lived in suffering. The same was true with my husband. One morning, while playing tennis, he collapsed and died on the court. After receiving the news, I went into the study to call and inform the family, and suddenly an extraordinary sensation came over me. The room seemed brighter and warmer. The fine hairs on my arms stood on end, and I felt comforted, encouraged, and strangely joyful, as if I were embraced by my husband's love. At that moment, I heard his voice whisper, "Darling, I'm happy to go as I wished." That evening, I still attended a meeting at the school. After the meeting ended, I told everyone the news, and they were all deeply moved, so I had to go around comforting them. When a loved one dies, grief is natural, but I can't stand it when people display excessive sorrow. It usually means they carry some guilt toward the deceased. So you believe everything happens for a reason, and that ultimately it all leads to something good? Yes, I believe that humans are born with boundless creative intelligence, which we ignorantly fail to understand, destroy, and forget. This era is the time for us to return to our true nature. Just like conversations with other Western gurus about reincarnation, speaking with Dr. Denning was truly inspiring. What I learned from her and from other experts in past and future lives wasn't different from what I'd heard Eastern Lamas teach. The details about reincarnation may differ, but the truth remains the same. The truth that Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa shared with us in the tent on the slopes of Kopan, that after death, there is another life, that the nature of that life depends on karma from countless past lives, that the state of mind at the moment of death plays a crucial role in influencing the next life, that people often return to live among those with whom they share karmic ties, that the sufferings of this life are created by ourselves, etc. We should not blame or resent anyone because we are always the masters of our own lives.